the big thing here is he ends up collecting some of the things he thinks are cool, which are all the cool things we think are cool, nostalgic wise, like tape players and yo-yos and the little paddle with the ball and all those cool things you had when you were a kid. So Wally really comes off to me like a child almost. Even when, so he finds the plant, and at that time, conveniently, the Eve units come down, and he kind of falls for Eve at this point, right? And
it's something more futuristic than him. So he's actually in awe of what Eve can do.
Right. But now she sees the plant. She doesn't see the plant at this point, but she sees him and she shoots. She's bad. She is one bad cat because she's got a gun in her arm and she's trying to blow him away. She's blowing up the tires and everything. So she's crazy, but then he's sneaking around, following her around. And you kind of see it's like a child with their first crush. This is the first other being other than the roach, which we now know is named Hal, that he's been around. And Eve stands for extraterrestrial vegetation evaluator. So that's what Eve stands for. And I did look up a few of them because I was just interested in them. Later on, we see the little one that scrubs. His name is M.O., and he's a microbe obliterator. That's what that stands for. So I found that interesting, and that's one I didn't know. I did know Eve. I did know Wally, but so now we have this story where he's kind of trying to sneak around and get one last glimpse at her and trying to figure out he's trying to sneak over and get next to her to talk to her, which I thought was adorable.
Yeah, it's so first crush, like you said. It's the subplot to the many plots of the movie that actually overpower what the other two messages are.
Yeah, and exactly. I love the way you put that.
Yeah, it's so adorable to see the first time he lays eyes on a woman or on a girl, like we as guys do, goo goo gaga, whatever the case may be. What's interesting about her? I need to know what she does. And she plays the girl who doesn't like boys.
At first.
Ew, get away from it. Yeah, at first, get away from me.
They play like they're 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, something like that.
Yeah. Get away from me. Ew, it's a boy, But they come together. To, once they find out about the plant, they come together because they both want to live in this world. That they want to contribute to the conservation. They want to live back on Earth, and they want to start it.
Well, it's interesting because now I watched this movie again, preparing for this, and I watched it with my daughter, who's 6. And she tells me she's seen it, but I never watched it with her before, so I'm not positive that's true. But anyway, so at first, Wally gets Eve to go back to where he's keeping all his cool stuff, and he's handing her things, and she doesn't know what they are. He doesn't really know what it is. But he hands her the light bulb, and she's electric, so he lights up the light bulb, and then he takes it. He's I don't get it, and he hands it back to her. And now again, we haven't had any real words at this point. She can talk a little bit. She says directive, and she says Wally, and this is when she starts to kind of like him back, because when he sneaks over to her, she's like, Wally, Eva, and and Wally's like, Eva? No, and she wants to say no, Eve, but he can't get it right, so she finds that cute, and they do that whole thing. And then I found it interesting. He's fitted with a early warning system, because just before the Dust Bowl comes to hit him, he starts freaking out. He goes to grab her. She loses it, she's about to shoot him. And then she realizes, we're in trouble. He gets her back to his little, it's a truck, I guess, the back of a truck. And that's safety, right? So they're safe away while the dust flies around. This is when that whole scene happens. And this is when they really start to make a connection. And here's the amazing thing. There's no real words being used.
Yes.
We understand everything that's going on without them having to spell it out for us with regular words. Just by using Eve and Wally and saying it in different inflections, we understand whether they're upset, whether they're happy, whether they're mad, what they're mad about, what they're happy about. It's crazy.
It's crazy, and this is the second movie we've done in succession where words haven't been said, but the senses of which you see on screen or what you hear, like you said, inflections, tell the story. Okay.
Right, absolutely.
Fantasia was like that as well.
The tone.
Fantasia was like that as well. The tone of the story, that's what you get.
Okay, and listeners, we are not that bright. We didn't think this out. This just so happened to happen.
It's blue-collar education, folks. That's exactly what it is. It's blue-collar education.
We didn't go, hey, let's pick another movie that doesn't speak. We didn't do that.
I know when watching this movie, that's the first thing I thought was Fantasia. Because you get the sense of the story and the script and the tone of the movie just by 2 words.
Right,
and
for the most part.
Inflections and what you see for the most part. Because there are visuals of eyes dimming, there are visuals of hand movements and whatnot, and audio as well. So it was very well told for minimal voice, for minimal speech.
Right, and so now this is where she finally sees the plant. And now her directive kicks in, right? So the plant goes into her. She has like a little compartment in her front, like stomach area, I guess, right? And that once it goes in, she shuts down, waiting to be picked up. Mm-hmm. But Wally doesn't understand this, so now he's trying to take care. He's trying to wake her up. He's holding her out, putting an umbrella over in the rain. He's trying to get her sunlight, because that was a cool scene too. Like early on when he first woke up. Early in the movie, he goes to put like his treads on. It's me getting up in the morning, like trying to get to work. Like, oh man, I gotta put shoes on again. But he's out there. He looks like he's sunbathing, but he's really just collecting energy at that point, right? And
right.
But now he's trying to take care of her. Puts like lights around her for Christmas, I guess it was. When she gets picked up, he tags along, and this is where the movie really picks up, because now we're going to the Axiom, and. We'll talk about it at the end, but there's a short that happens starting here and going on. You see a very small clip of it in the one scene where they come back in, but you don't see it anywhere else except unless you watch that short from 2008. And when they get to the ship, it's all about getting Eve to the captain so that the captain can see that there's a plant inside of Eve. And a lot of shenanigans happen at this point.
Yeah, it is. There's tons of stuff that happens, but it goes back to the conservation and comes back to is the simplest form of life is a plant, and this is what's going to reconstruct the earth, and this is what is needed to reconstruct the earth, because as we find out in the end, soil gets made. More plants become, and the earth goes back to what it was once known for. And I find that to be so ironic that they choose a plant as the simplest life form to create an atmosphere.
Right. Well, without it, you can't breathe, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
So now we have our means of breathing, so it's all good. At this point, it is found, they take Eve, they put her down, they start checking all the Eve units. And they find that she has, in the little, like, he looks like a little cop bot. He's not really a cop, though, but he checks them to see if any of them have life. He finds out she does. He has, like, a little red, like, siren light thing on his head.
Right. It's not like a security bot or
almost,
something
but
like
there's bigger security bots later on in the movie. But so he checks them, and now they wake up the captain, right? And we see the picture, and you can see in all the captains, right? As they go through the list, you can see them getting heavier and heavier.
Yes.
Because now you have the years for these captains are pretty substantial years that they're captains, actually. You have Captain Reardon was 2105 to 2248. Captain Fee was 2248 to 2379. Thompson was 2380 to 2520. Captain Thompson. Captain Brace was 2521 to 2645. Captain O'Brien was 2646 to 2774. And now Captain B. McCree is 2775 to 2805, which is the year we're in now, 2805, right. In the movie. And if you look at those numbers, if you break that down, actually, assuming you become a captain at 20, the captains are living 160 years. So they're doing kind of the same thing that like Star Trek does, where you live exponentially longer because technology has gotten to that point where everything's better. And except that the last two would have died at like 130 years. So their life expectancy went down. So
Right.
the message that most people believe they're trying to send you is if you end up doing nothing and just wasting your life away, that eventually your life goes backwards because you're not doing enough to sustain it long term.
It's a very good point.
I like the little chat. I mean, it's a little thing that you have to kind of look into, but it's there.
It's there, and I think that rolls along the lines of consumerism and what's available and what's not available. And when you have, nothing available, you start to wither away. And I think that's where they were getting with this thing here. And I find that fact very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this all plays in because, look, we have this B&L advertised all over the ship, which is interesting to me because when they show you B&L, right, nobody else knows any of that advertising is even there. Because they show you that Wally, trying to get to Eve, pulls back the video screens and she can't see it. She's like, the woman's like, wow, I never saw all this. Like, she doesn't say those words, but obviously that's the message that they're giving you.
Is what's behind it, and no one even knows because the screen's been there for however many.
And even though it's translucent, nobody
Yes.
even looks past the screen.
No, because they have the screens in front of them in the chair.
You see the two guys. The guy's like, let's go hit some virtual golf balls into space. And then the other guy's like, nah, I don't want to do that today. And then you realize they're sitting next to each other. They don't even turn their head to talk. They're literally talking to a screen to a guy next to them, which is me and my wife sometimes when I'm in the basement and she's upstairs and we're texting. But
or even if you see the kids nowadays, it's
four kids sitting at a table texting.
Or kids sitting at the table texting, and they could be texting each other or they could be texting other people.
It's crazy. I remember I was in Hilton Head, back in July, and me and my son would go out late at night. Not late at night, but, high tide, 11 o'clock, 10:30, 11, depending on when the high tide was coming in. And we'd go fishing, and every time we get down there was a bunch of teenagers down there. Now, whatever. I mean, they weren't causing trouble. They weren't being rowdy or ruckus or whatever. Even, in fact, I could hear what they were saying as I was coming over, and when they saw my younger son, they stopped talking in that manner. They were very respectful kids in that way.
Right.
However, they were all sitting on their phones. You're at a fishing pier, sitting at a picnic table, sitting around a picnic table together on the phones. Now, I get it. I sound like an old fogey now because that's just the way society is today. That's what we do. The risk of that is ending up like the people in the floating chairs.
Yeah. And it's sad that, me coming up as a kid, it was always go outside and play. 4 seasons a year. We always found something to do. And nowadays it's all about, go outside and play. Oh no, I got my phone. I'm good. I'm right here.
Yeah.
And
go ask Little Leagues. They've lost heavy amounts of registrations because kids just don't play sports like they used to. Parents don't put them in sports. Now, some of that's not, look, a lot of that's not the kid's fault.
Right.
Kids are raised with these devices. They're way better than they were when we were kids. We had a speak and spell. I mean, that doesn't compare to an iPad.
Cow.
And so those are the kind of toys we had. However, with parents working 2 jobs, 2 parents working a job each, or sometimes multiple jobs for one or both of the parents, it's hard to make sure your kids do get out and play and do things. It's
the way society is nowadays. Where what used to be a 1-income household,
you're right,
that can feed, society's now become a 2-income household.
Minimum. And that's the minimum. And, look, I live in New York. It's one of the most expensive places in the world to live. I understand this heavily. I try and get my kids out as much as possible, but that's not what this podcast is about. The point is, society as a whole is going towards a more computer age, which is not the worst thing either.
No.
But we just need to find a balance.
Yes.
There needs to be a balance.
Because it is used for education. It's easier than going back to when we had the encyclopedias or we had textbooks.
And that's if you could afford the encyclopedias.
Yes.
I didn't have an encyclopedia growing up. They were a lot of money. There was 15 volumes, and you'd get the things in the mail. Like, buy the first 2 are only $10. Every one after that is 30 or something like that.
Sure.
It would take families like a year to get the whole volumes.
But again, it's not what this podcast is about. But it's showing the society through the years, and this is what the movie is doing. It's showing society through the years and what can possibly end up if we don't encourage, if we don't set examples.
It also shows you at the end of this movie, which I found interesting, what